This is my name. My name is Matouš Kučera. I'm from the company Envelon. I'm actually a co-founder of this company. It's quite a young company, like nearly 1 year, but we had a project before that. So I think we have lots of experience, or at least a team, and lots of stuff to do and work on. And the thing what I've prepared for you is, I've called it Grails in Action because there is a famous book about the Grails. It's this name, and you will see it in the reference. And if you would like to extend your knowledge in Grails, you should read that because one of the developers from the Grails wrote that, and there are lots of useful information there. So, just a wrap up about the company. Quite young, we are working mostly in Prague, but we have some project in Munich as well, in Germany. Mainly we were focusing on the development on demand, so when the customer came, then we could deliver some kind of software. I highlighted here the web development because this is the majority of the project we are working on, or we were working on before. But we are able to do some desktop application and other stuff as well. And there is the smallest one. We have also some our own projects working on. This is about me. I'm from Czech. I was studying here the bachelor in this Czech Technical University at the field computer science, and then I moved to Munich, to Germany, to finish the master in software engineering. As I said, I'm co-founder, and I highlighted here the years of experience. It's quite funny because I was listening one presentation of the developer from the Grails. He's called Grails Services, and he said that he has seen one advertisement of one guy, and he said, I have like 7 or 8 years experience in Grails, and he said, okay, it's my project and I have 7 experience of Grails, so I don't remember how much years I'm working on that, but at least 4. So let's get inside. So probably you know Grails. It's a web application framework, and I've tried to sum up some notes about this framework, which I realized during the future, and which I think are quite important for if you would like to develop in Grails or select another project. So this is just some highlights. For me, it's quite important that it's for rapid development. If you were working in Spring, for example, or other frameworks, the problem there was usually that the development was quite slow. If you would like to accomplish some task, then I found that in Grails it's quite easy and quite fast. When you know the framework, then quite rapidly you are able to develop something. It's open source, that's always good. This convention over configuration, they mention it on their sites, and this means that they stick more to the conventions like, I don't know, probably you know the controllers and domain classes in Grails, and the reason why the framework recognizes, for example, the domain class is just because it's placed in a certain folder. So it's some kind of convention. Let's put domain classes into the Grails app / domain, and it will be a domain class. In the Spring you will do it differently. They stick more to the configuration. They have a huge list of XML files where they specify their beans, and I think it's a pro, because if you stick to this convention, it's much more faster, because you don't need to specify it on one side and implement it on other side, but you will put the class there, or I don't know, whatever the name. For example, the services, there is an appendix called services there, so every class which is actually placed in a services folder and has this suffix will be a service, so it's much more faster, I think. And this is the current version. I'm pretty sure we are working on that, right? In this version. Good. I think there is a new version coming soon, 2.3.
Well, we tried and there was some problems with it.
Yeah, but it's not a release, or it's not a...
Release candidate.
Yeah, it's a release candidate. So, yeah, I have never worked with that. It's like when you would like to, for example, use new feature which would be covered by this version, then you could try that, but usually there are also parts
There are totally other dependencies, so when everything went just...
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah, but whatever. May I ask you how, or have you heard about the Grails before? Or how long of years experience or month, days you have with Grails?
I think for me it's about a year.
Okay, so you've heard about Grails like 1 year ago, and for the others?
2 days.
2 days? Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, 2 or 3 days.
Okay, and honestly I don't remember when I was starting with that, and I don't know which problems I had, because it's a long time ago, but maybe that's good, because just ask me if you have some problems, or we can look on that later. Really, what a problem. So yeah, let's talk about why we decided to use Grails a few years ago. One thing was that it's built on Java. I'm a Java developer, and I said, okay, I don't want to not teach something else, but to stick with the technology, I believe, a little bit. And it's also strong when you go to some manager and you say, okay, I have a new framework, and he say, oh, better not touch that. But if you will mention that it's built on Java or even Spring or Hibernate, then it would be one reason why this framework would be selected. And I think it's actually the thing, because lots of companies, lots of even big companies are working with Grails. I heard about the EBRA, and it was a surprise for me. This was the guy, or 2 guys, which had the presentation before me, and they are also working with the Grails, and EBRA is quite a big company, so I think that's why you should select Grails. And then Groovy, have you heard about that, or you just see the appendixes of the classes? Have you heard about Groovy before? Not that really.
I don't think that is it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I will speak about it later. When I started with Grails, I didn't know about Groovy at all, and I said, okay, it looks similar to Java, it would not be a big deal. But then I discovered lots of things which actually brings you a big value when you would like to work with that. So that's why I put it here as an advantage, because Groovy is quite a powerful language, and they usually say that the Java is not dead, but it's not, so flexible, or not much people working on Java currently. So that's why they decided to write their own language, which is actually based on the Java virtual machine binary code. So I would put this as an advantage. The second thing is the Grails plugin system. I'm pretty sure you worked with some of the plugins, or in the application. Do you have some dependencies in your project?
Yes, just few for now, but I think there will be more.
Yeah. But anyway, what are you working on? I was not told before. So could you just say what are you working on which project?
It's a job protocol.
Yeah, I know this. Okay. So you are just extending the functionality.
We built it in a big hurry last summer, and now we are supposed to work on it.
Okay.
So it's like half of the code is connected, and
We're cleaning the mess.
You are cleaning the mess. That's what to say. That's hard job at least. But on the other hand, if you have some working code, then if there are some good habits, then you can learn them, and if there are bad habits, then you can even improve them, or not improve the bad habits, but improve it to a better code.
We can avoid them in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So there is some advantage to work on other projects. Yeah, I said it before, it's rapid development framework. Also, what I like is really good documentation. Not for all things, but if you are starting with this framework, then you have lots of documentation. Briefly about the Groovy. Famous is the Groovy on Grails because it's actually similarity to Ruby on Rails. So I don't know why they decide to put or to select this name, but whatever. Sometimes you can hear that. The question is if you need that. I mean the knowledge of the Groovy, and I don't know. Maybe not. You can start with Grails just with the knowledge of Java. That's not a big deal. But on the other hand, let's say it was like 2 years ago I realized that the Groovy brings you really big value, so I started to learn it a little bit. So I think you should leverage that. Maybe start on the Grails because then you will see you will accomplish some tasks, some issues, and then if you have time, just look on the Groovy, learn it step by step, and 99% of the code is usually written in Groovy, in Grails, because all the classes are .groovy classes. You can specify Java classes there, but honestly, I'm not using them anymore, or just for certain occasions. So what's the advantage of Groovy? One guy told me that they just don't use the semicolons. So if you look on the class, for some reason it's not visible in all class. Whatever. Yeah, on the first look, if you look on that, it's like a Java class, and just the semicolons are missing. So what's the advantage? I would say that there are more benefits. I would like just to mention them or maybe give some example, and if you would be interested, then ask me for one or more, or just search for them. Usually good thing about the list is that at least you know the name, so you can search for that. I think the first and the most visible benefit is the calculus. I don't know if you have heard about that in mathematics or in computer science. It's like when, if I would like to explain it on some example, then it's quite easy because sometimes you have some situation that, for example, you have a method and there is a common code which is on the start and on the end of the method, and you have more these methods. And what you would do in Java is like you would write the same code for each method, or if you would be smarter, then probably you will create 2 other methods which will do the same code. But with this closure, with this lambda calculus, you can implement some method and just say to this method that the start and the end should be like that. I'm not sure if I am able to explain it better, but at least you can look on that, and it's heavily used in Groovy and even in Grails, because in Grails, for example, in the controllers, you usually have lots of similar code. Like, I don't know, if you would like to work with some user and you have lots of methods, and the procedure in the start is always the same. Like, I don't know, give me this user, say me if I'm allowed to see him or something like that. So this is quite useful for that. Another stuff is collections. You know, collections from Java, like I don't know, hash maps or array list, and the collections are quite nicely implemented in Groovy. You don't need to use some specific objects or whatever. But for example, the iteration, if you would like go through the whole map and receive all the keys and values and that stuff, this is really nice in Groovy. Have you heard about this Elvis operator? The name is because I think because it looks like Elvis. It's what's inside. Yeah, it's like this. I don't know. Maybe this is his hair, whatever. So if you will round it like that, then it's Elvis. I don't know. Name it like that. And the thing is with this operator is that quite easily you can write on one line if then else statement. Usually in Java you need for 4 lines for that. In Groovy you can just do it on one line. Yeah.
Is it like Turner operator?
Yeah.
It's shortened.
Yeah. Something like that. It's like let's say you have some, you know that in Groovy you can define the variables like that, because you don't need a type. Let's say auto, or actually in English it's car. And you would write equals there, and then before you have some, I don't know, Boolean attribute. Let's say, I don't know, the name is, I don't know, his car, and then you can, this is a Boolean value, and then you can write the question mark. It's mean like if yes, then accomplish this. So let's say, let's assign yes to that variable, to this car, and if not, then you specify the column here, and you will assign no. So it's like if something, the question is here, then do this. If not, then this. And you can write it in one line, so it's quite usable for lots of occasions in Grails. And there is string templates, like you can compose quite easily some strings and put some attributes inside that. Some meta class, maybe it's not so important here. Yeah, let's speak about something more important here, and it's a Grails architecture. I don't know, do you know something about design patterns or architectural patterns? A little bit. The thing is that in computer science, there are usually some tasks, and they could be solved somehow. And if someone finds a certain task for more occasions, and the solution would be similar, then they call it pattern. And Grails actually uses one architectural pattern, which is called model view controller. And here is the issue that you have some, let's say, model data, some data stored in a database. You have some logic, and you would like to display them somewhere. So it's a common problem in software engineering. For example, for the desktop application, it's the same. Like, you have some data somewhere, you need to show them somewhere, and to do some stuff with them. And I think it was Gang of 4. They come up with this model view controller, and this pattern is leveraged by the Grails. And if we look on this UML diagram, up you have the controller. You should specify some business logic there. Like, I don't know, if you have, for example, account in a bank, then probably all the transaction would be placed there. So it's some kind of business logic. In the model on the right side, it's the data which are persisted somehow. For the Grails, usually it's a relation database or NoSQL database. And on the left side you have the view, so what the customer or the user can see. And the Grails are heavily built on that. So let's go through that. First, for the model, here in Grails they call it domain classes, as I mentioned before. Right? So you know the domain classes. They are for modeling the domain model, how the data structure should be structured, how the relationships should be there, and all the stuff. So this is in Grails, the model. They call it domain classes. If we will look on some code, then you have the class, and each class you can usually imagine like if you use the relation database table, then the class is a table. And here you specify certain attributes which will be usually mapped to a certain column, if you know that. For example, you know the object relation mappings. It's like when you have an object model, because Grails or Java, Groovy, all that stuff is So you have classes, you have relationships, but in the relation databases, it's a different approach. So this object relation mappings try to deal between, cover the gap between these two words, I think. So this is the domain class. Then you can also specify more things. For example, do you know the as-many? What does it mean in domain class? Or let's speak about the as-many first. It's like, here the example is that we have a bank. So it would be some, I don't know, online banking system probably. And here you have an entity bank, and the bank in the real world can have many clients. And you will model it in Grails like this. You specify the bank, it's a class, it's a domain class, and this client, if you look on the import, then it's also a domain class. And here the as-many specifies the relationship between them. So you have one entity bank and lots of clients. So in Grails you can specify it like that. And then if you have an instance of the bank somewhere in the code, then you can access it by this name. So you would have bank.clients and you will get the list of the clients. It will be a collection actually. Then let's skip this. The constraints, you know, maybe more. It's about constraining the attributes. So in Grails they implemented lots of constraints. For example, the famous one is malleable. So it means that this name, because you specify this string name, should not be malleable. So it means that if you create this bank class, it should have at least a name. And then you have, for example, this constraint blank. It means that it could not be empty. I mean, empty string. Null means like null object, and blank is for the empty string. And unique is more or less clear. It means that in the whole database, in this table bank, there should be the name should be unique. So you cannot have a bank with the same two banks with one name. And this is about the constraints. It belongs to let's keep it. Maybe it's a little bit more complicated. Then look on the controllers. You need to be beware here, because in Grails the controllers are called the services. So if you will imagine the whole model here, then you have the model, you have the controllers. We covered the model so far, it's called the domain classes, and then in this pattern they call it controllers. You should put the business logic there, but in Grails it's called services. The controllers are something else. So this means that all your business logic, all computation, or I don't know, maybe even the database queries, everything that goes to the services, because the pattern says that. And here we have some bank service. So again, there is a convention that each service should have a suffix of service. It should be placed in the. Actually, I mentioned it here that it's meant. It should be placed somewhere in the Grails app services, whatever. Then you can specify or you should specify the package name, and it's a Groovy class. So the ending is with Groovy, but the class should end with a service. If you look on the second row, there is a transactional. The services are implemented in Grails like they can have certain scopes. One of them is transactional. The transactional means that all the methods which are implemented here would be wrapped by a transaction. I mean the database transaction. So it means if anything goes wrong during this method, and wrong means that there will be exception thrown, then all the stuff will be rolled back. If you specify that static transactional equals true. So it's quite nice, because it's what you would expect. If something goes wrong, then it will be rolled back. There are more scopes, like for example singleton. If you know the singleton, it means that only one instance can exist in the whole application, and there are more scopes. You can search quite easily for them. Yeah, the third line, this def account service. Have you heard about this dependency injections? It's also a pattern actually, and in Grails it's used like if you would like to wire some classes, then it's recommended to use the dependency injection. It's mandatory. I think it's mandatory for all the services. So whenever you have defined some service and you would like to use it somewhere, then you should specify it like here, this def account service, nothing more. It's again a convention, and Grails will understand that you would like to inject this kind of service into that place. So for my bank service, it's like I have an account service somewhere defined in the system, and if I specify it here, then I can immediately use it. And it means that I can call all the methods which are defined actually in this account service. It's the same for the controllers. You can inject the stuff there. And yeah, maybe go through the method. I call it bankrupt. What we can do there, we just call this account service, and we will get all the accounts somehow, and then I'm going through all the accounts and do some stuff here. Actually, I'm stealing the money from all the accounts, and then I give when I take them. If you look on the code, do you understand all the stuff, or is there anything new for you? Or do you have the Java experience? You know the Java. So there are some differences at least. So what's the difference here? if you would like to write it similarly with Java, you need to write it differently.
Why does it say just money at the end without return?
Yeah, I mentioned that in the comment. It means that all the methods and even the closures doesn't need to have the return statement. It's in Groovy, and they will simply return what's on the last row of this method. So you don't need to use that. But sometimes, or I think you should use it because then it's clear. Like on the first look, if you look on the method, then there is no return. You don't even specify it here. There is no return. So I think you should specify the return statement there, because it's clear then that you are returning something at least. And other differences are there?
Let's use the closure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is the closure. So yeah, it's implemented also in Groovy that you don't know what I am returning here with this account, but I would expect that it's some kind of collection, probably the list of all the accounts. So you don't know it here, but on each collection you can call the each. It's like if you would go through all the values in there in this collection, so you can use it on hash maps or on normal maps, on list, array list, on whatever you have. So, and then they do it, they leverage the closure. So you just simply call each, and then you know that something is going there. It's actually defined somewhere here, you don't know it, but you know it's a list, so just one value will come there. It's like a method, and so it would be like a method each and one attribute, but the notation is a little bit different. And the thing how it's implemented, I think, is that it do some code before disclosure, then call it disclosure, and then do code in the end, I think. And yeah, and inside you can call this account, because then you have a certain instance of that list. And what we do here is we just take the money, we add them to my money, then set the money to 0 because I took all the money from this account, and then save it. And that's it. So it's like a for each loop. So these are the services, and let's go to the controllers, or in a speak of this pattern, to the views, because in the Grails the name controllers is for the views for this pattern. So again, there is a convention that all the controllers should go to this folder, and it should be Groovy class. And according to this pattern, what you should do in the controller is you should just work with some inputs from the user and do some output, nothing more usually. I myself stick to put lots of code into the controllers, but it's not nice because the controller methods are not reusable like in the services. Whatever you define in service, you can call it from everywhere. So if you need some business logic, even you need it on one place, then it's good practice to put it into the services. And the thing is that the controllers should deal just with the input, as I said, from the user, and do the output, and even call the services probably. If we will look on that, then it's similar to this service, but again, the appendix is controller. Here we are injecting some Spring Security service. This service actually comes from one plugin from Grails. And what this Spring Security service does, it will give you the current user. So probably in the system there was some login, and if the user were logged in, then whenever you can call him. And again, there is a convention. The method, which is called index, is called whenever you would like to reference to this account. So actually you don't need to specify, for example, in a certain link, you should specify the controller and the method. And if you don't specify the method, you will just call the account and the index will be called. And some stuff here. You can call, for example, the redirect in the controller, and it will redirect you to a certain action. For our case, it's a show, or you can specify even other controller, so you can redirect the user all the time. And here is a specification of a method which by the name should show you the account, I think. And what you do here is you expect some ID of the probably of the account, and then you have the account. You can call the account is a domain class. You call get on it. You have the object, and then you return it here. And here you see that I don't use the return because it's more or less clear that every controller method returns something. And by this case, it's a map. It's a definition of a map which contains just the account. And as you know, each controller method can render something. So if you don't specify the redirect and just return the map of attributes, then by some convention, some GSP will be generated and will contain this value. I don't know. Have you seen that before?
I think it renders the view named by the action.
Exactly.
Exactly.
If you would go to the views, then there would be a folder with the same name as the controller. So there will be account and slash. Then the method name will be also the folder name. So account slash show slash, and I'm lying. Just account slash and then the show.gsp. So again, the convention here. But if you need it, you can even specify to render a different GSP, for example. And you would not return here the map, but you would call the render method, and then you will specify the view, and you will specify the whole path to this GSP file. Yeah, the last thing are the views. At least they are, or the thing here, I mentioned here that the controllers are the views, and now I'm saying that the views are also views. So you can understand the GSPs and the controllers as a one box here in this UML diagram, and the GSPs are used just for displaying the data, and the controllers can deal somehow with them. So yeah, two things covered by one box here. And the GSP, it's, I think, Groovy server pages is a shortcut for that. It's inspired by JSP, if you heard about that. It comes from Enterprise Java, and the shortcut is Java server pages. And the notation is quite similar. You can call some text there, which can do some stuff, or here you can even call some attributes which were passed from the controller to the view. And yeah, that's it. You can use the normal HTML inside, so like specify the HTML, body, whatever, and then this is some additional stuff which you can use. Yeah. Yeah, a few more slides, just again mentioning the names. If you would be interested, then just look on that. In Grails they have some core. It's a shortcut for the Grails object relation mapping. It's the same thing I was speaking about before. Like you have the object model on one side and then the relation database, and you need to deal between storing the object and getting the object from the database. And they actually leverage the Hibernate, if you know. It's an implementation of object relation mapping for Java, and they leverage that and define some additional methods which you can use. For example, one of them was this get, I think, where it is. There it is. Yeah, here. So here you have the domain class account, and every domain class has method get, which consumes the ID of the object and will give you the resulting object. So it comes from this form. Yeah. Important thing here: dynamic finders. If you are interested, search for them. Or for complex queries, you can use criteria. The thing is that you don't need to specify the SQL. Like in the Hibernate, they are using HQL, or how it's called. And here they can just call some methods and you will receive the data, or you have this criteria builder where you can build more complex queries to the database. So if you would be interested, then look on that. One important thing, I'm not sure if it's used in this e-carriera. You have it, it's not used there. The scaffolding is about that. Yeah, how to explain it? You have, for example, the controllers, and the controllers for every domain class are usually the same. You would like to have the view there, or it's called usually show, then save it, edit it, delete it, and all that stuff. And it's usually the similar stuff there, just the domain class is changing. And Grails support so-called scaffolding, and you would define some template for the controller, and it will implement all these methods. And then in the real controller you will specify this should be scaffolded, and it will take all the stuff from this template and use it. So you will just implement it once, and then you can use it for every domain class you have in your in your project. So it's quite complex, but if you would like to extend your knowledge in Grails, then I would go for that for sure, because yeah.
I think there were used only dynamic scaffolding, so or static. I mean, you know which what I mean, just generating, and then you can rewrite it with the dev scaffold.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that. But yeah, maybe leave it for now, but definitely look on that if you would like to extend your knowledge about that. Grails plugin, mentioned it before. Here are just a list, which I think are quite important. Yeah, the Grails, they have some platform of the plugins. They are somewhere in Maven repository, I think, and you can search for them in the Grails pages, web pages, and you can find lots of useful stuff, so you don't need to implement it, and just leverage this plugin, or these plugins. One of them is Screen Security Core. I'm pretty sure you are using this plugin in Ikaria. It's for all the user management stuff, login, and it's quite huge. The Resources plugin, just mentioning database migration. It's a project, the problem when you need to change the domain model and you need to also change the relation database, then I would go for this database migration where you specify simple, let's say SQL statements which deals with the transition from one state to a different state. So this is the database migration fields, just mentioning here. Java time. It's a plugin, but for the Grails, but inside there is a Java time implementation for Java. So whenever you would like to work with some time zones, dates, I don't know, time spans, whatever time, then I would go for Java time. Otherwise, it would be a big problem in Java. If you know, for example, Java util date, it's a big problem.
We got a calendar now. It's a little bit better.
It's a little bit better now. Not still the best one. The Java is one of the best. Feature Bootstrap, I've heard that first presentation was on the responsive design, was it? Then Feature Bootstrap is also a plugin for Grails, which also leverage a different implementation of this stuff, country selector. Yeah, I'm mentioning here because it's my only one plugin I've done, so you can look on that also. Yeah, back to the start. So I think it's, we are small, but we are still hiring, so if you will be ready with this project, then you are welcome to see us, and we can show you what we are working on if you are interested. Yeah, that's all.